Hello, everyone, and welcome to the new MDs. Delighted to see you. Happy holiday, happy and healthy new year for 2026. I am Dr. Michelle Perro. I am CEO of GMOscience.org and co-author of the book, What's Making Our Children Sick, soon to come out with a new book, fingers crossed, Making Our Children Well. And so please stay tuned for that. But today we have a packed show. It's more of a lecture style, hopefully not too boring. And I really want to go over a topic that's been near and dear to my heart, GMOs, and something I've been really kind of digging deep in lately, which is geoengineering. And I started wondering about the links between GMOs and geoengineering. And then I started doing my research, and lo and behold, I found these two topics were related, very much so. And I thought, well, gee, everyone must know about this, right? Oh, not so much. So I said, well, if I didn't know about it, and I've been a student of GMOs for 25 years, maybe, I think so, then perhaps I should share it with you. So with no further ado, I'm going to get the presentation going. And just to remind you, fine folks, that these presentations live on the website, GMOscience.org. Thank you. Please visit. And you can click down on the presentations, and you will also see it in the show notes for this episode. So let's get started today, shall we? So the way I did this talk is the first section will be on GMOs and an overview, genetically modified organisms, for those of you who forgot. And then I'm going to do a brief overview of geoengineering. I'll then get into the links between these two issues. Of course, we are solutionaries here at the new MDs, and a call to action, or I should say calls to action. So let's dig in deep. I am not a geneticist, nor am I an expert in geoengineering. So why am I studying this and educating you about it is because where I do have my talents lie within healthcare, particularly with children. And I've been on this, and we started GMO Science in 2014 to counter groups like this, GMO Answers. These are pro-GMO organizations. I don't like to think of pro and anti. I just hate that terminology. I was thinking of ourselves as a group to bring the science on GMO concerns. Presently, these are the genetic traits in GMOs, mostly in food, but please recall, they are also in your medications, insulin, recombinant, Hep B vaccine, heparin, etc. Many medications are genetically modified. It's extensive, and they made their way via cotton into our products, like tampons, like cotton pledgets when you go see the dentist. Those are all genetically modified. Let me give you one example. This is one of my favorites, BT corn. It stands for bacillus. It's a type of bacterium. And so what Monsanto, now Bayer, did, they took this BT corn, which includes the DNA of this microbe, and put it in this corn so that when the corn borer chews on the corn, it gets kind of explodes. That's right. It has a little explosion of its stomach. And we were told that this wouldn't hurt us because the acidity in our stomachs would break down the BT. Oh, but wait, about 50% of Americans have something called acid reflux. And 50% of people use medications for acid reflux. And about 20% of Americans identifies having acid reflux. So many Americans do not have an acidic environment in their stomachs. And this stuff has actually been shown in 2 different studies to be floating around the bloodstream of fetuses. Oh, yeah. So what are the issues with GMOs? Remember, this is the review. I had a wonderful episode, I believe it's last episode, with my friend and colleague, Howard Vlieger, farmer extraordinaire, researcher, student of the soil, and we discussed it at length. But I'm going to sum them up because GMOs are not benign. Why? Mutations can occur and deletions can occur throughout the DNA. There are the production of new proteins and new allergens we haven't seen before. Our immune systems get confused and mount immune responses against these new proteins. Process is neither precise, it's random, and there is secondary collateral damage. The chemicals used on GMO crops have created these super weeds, and approximately 75% of the weeds in America are now resistant to glyphosate-based herbicides. So Big Ag has had to use more toxic herbicides and more stacked genetic traits. And the chemicals the GMO plants are engineered to tolerate accumulate in the plants, which we then consume. But I'm going to continue. That gene insertion disrupts DNA, and those gene insertions create changes in gene expression. Some genes switch on, which may accidentally switch on harmful genes in dormant viruses. And gene editing can turn off enzymes, which we need for disease resistance. The nutrient levels are not the same, they're much less than GMO crops, and they can also produce unintentional RNA variants. So I want to get into this issue regarding something that I'm very concerned about, which will lead into the next section about GMOs. There's GMOs 1.0, which is what we've been doing in our food since 1996, where they use a gene gun. And then we're going to get into GMOs 2.0, which is the CRISPR technology. And we're going to get into that. But I'd like to tell you that 800 to about 1,400 codon changes occur with these gene inserts. And we're going to get into what that is. So I just want to share that there are many differences from one insert to another. And that's why each genetically engineered event has to be analyzed. I know this is hard to believe because no two are the same. And there are other aberrations that have been evaluated, such as those little bacteria are promiscuous and they can be transferred from the GI tract to us. They swap plasmids, little bacterial sex going on. So these new microbes are being formed. And in essence, we are genetically modified. And I guess we are owned by Monsanto Bayer. Isn't that something to think about? So the next 4 slides, I'm going to go through what these codons are. And this is a little bit of genetics. And for some of you might want to go get your cup of coffee now, tune out. If it's too much science, I get it. But I thought it was important to understand, why are we so alarmed about this CRISPR technology? And I keep talking about that, and I'll describe what it is in a second. And so 4 slides worth, tune out if you must, or let's go in for a deep dive. So what is a codon? And so that's a sequence of 3 nucleotides, which are the building blocks of RNA or DNA, that correspond to a specific amino acid. The amino acids are the building blocks of protein, or something called a stop signal, saying, hey, don't make anything more, stop, during protein synthesis. So for example, the codon AUG, adenine uracil guanine, codes for methionine, which is a start codon. And so you can see the base pairs. That's what that's a picture of. So a codon change, what is that? It refers to alterations in the sequence of DNA or RNA that affect the codons, which are, again, these 3-letter words made of nucleotides: adenine, thymine in DNA, uracil in RNA, and we also have cytosine and guanine. I think I said those right. My English must be leaving me today. That instruct the cell which amino acids to use when building proteins. This is all instructional. So why am I bringing this up? What's the problem? So a codon change occurs when there's either a mutation or gene editing, and it alters the original 3 nucleotide sequence. And this can happen through several ways. Either a point mutation, a single nucleotide is changed, or insertions or deletions, which can shift the reading frame, called a frame shift mutation. So this is important, and why it matters, because these codon changes can alter the structure or function of a protein with downstream effects and create new proteins. They can actually lead to genetic diseases. For example, sickle cell anemia results from a codon change. Or they can be intentionally introduced in genetic engineering, such as the mRNA vaccine, which is designed to optimize expression or avoid immune detection. Okay, so that was kind of what I wanted to cover about those codons. And now we're going to sort of get into the weeds further. I was thinking about, well, how many people actually cared about GMOs? Not the very sexy topic. Most people just say, oh, I just want to eat, leave me alone. And we can see that only 6% of US adults, and this data is from about 10 years ago from the Pew Research Center, really follow this closely. And then we have somewhat closely, not too closely, and not at all closely. And there's further data which says that I saw some research that I couldn't verify, so I didn't make a slide of it, that it said about 68% of Americans care about this topic. We do know that Americans want to know if they're eating GMOs, because when we were trying to label these things here in California, where I live, in 2014, it appeared that about 90% of Americans wanted to know. But as you may recall, and if not, I'll remind you that the FDA, the government said, no, 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 you can't know that you're eating a GMO. And so they banned every state in the US from labeling them. We failed here in California. Colorado failed. Washington State failed. Vermont passed. Colorado failed. Lots of money poured in on this issue. I care about it because we're eating this stuff and it's not benign. So these are my concerns. I just started listing all my concerns. And what are they? They can survive the acidity of your stomach. That's a myth. GM crops can transfer between species. There was one human feeding study that genetic material from a Roundup Ready soy was transferred into the gut bacteria of 3 of 7 human volunteers. It could transfer, and I'll get you that data if you like. I do have resources at the end of this talk. GM crops can increase antibiotic resistance. And remember, if those BT genes, remember the BT corn? If those genes transfer, they can turn our gut bacteria into living pesticide factories. Yes, you can make those pesticides. GM crops may concentrate toxicants, especially, we've spoke about this on this show many times, glyphosate. The main ingredient in Roundup is a metal chelator. It binds metals. And so it can concentrate those toxic metals, which we're going to get into on this podcast today. So I'd like to pivot here. And you guys are making some nice comments. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for listening. I was kind of worried talking about this subject today. Is this too heady? Does anybody care about this? But I said, I'm plowing ahead and appreciate all you folks listening to what I think is one of the most important topics presently that we're facing. So what the heck is gene editing? Genetic modification and gene editing are essentially synonymous, but I want to talk about this specific technology called CRISPR. So in 2018, the global market, 562 million. In 2023, it reached 1.7 billion. And you know what that means. Oh yeah, everyone is going to start gene editing. So what does it stand for? I have to look at this every time because I can't remember what this stands for. It's clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. And basically, it's a DNA sequence pattern, which you find in the genome of bacteria or archaea. And we have these microbes in our gut, bacteria, viruses, fungi, archaea, and protozoa, the main organisms in our microbiome. When they're paired with Cas, which is a CRISPR-associated enzyme, it forms the basis for a very powerful gene editing tool. I'd like to think of it as simplistically as a genetic scissors. So, there you go. What are the problems with CRISPR? Why are we talking about it today? Those genetic scissors can cut in the wrong place. So the CRISPR introduces the genetic scissors, the DNA cuts it, and there's a little guide that tells the scissor where to cut. You can damage off-target areas. It's not precise. There can be a sloppy repair. You can mix genes. You can make mutant proteins. You can get damage where you've inserted the gene that you want. You can get mutations. And you can also get, in a recent paper that just came out, epigenetic changes, which can affect inheritance. Our gene, we're kind of low on the totem pole of genes. We only have about 20,000 genes. Drosophila flies have more genes than we do. But what we do have are the epigenes, those little methyl and acyl groups, which are little molecules that sit on genes that are affected, for example, by what we do in the environment. And they can be turned on and off and tell the gene what to produce. So these epigenetic changes are very important. So what's happening in this CRISPR world? Well, this was from Cal Berkeley, and they're offering undergrad classes, how to CRISPR. So I took this statement from the Innovative Genomics Organization founded by Nobel laureate Jennifer Doudna. where they're using genome engineering to solve humanity's greatest problems in health, climate, and sustainable agriculture. Well, that's brilliant. And they want to have this material as a teaching kit for high schools, science centers, and educational institutions. Well, is that a good idea or not? I don't know. Let's look. So there is this huge do-it-yourself biology movement, which expands biotech, or also known as synthetic biology, which is a phrase that our government is now embracing. And there are participants, whether they're scientists, hobbyists, students, artists, grandmas, whomever, they're trained. And there's all types of activities in geoengineering. I mean, not geoengineering, genetic engineering. We'll get to geoengineering, genetic engineering. And there's an idea of amateur biotechnologist, which came up after the Human Genome Project about in 2000. So they state, and this is from Congress, the quote, the movement democratizes biology by making tools, knowledge, and lab access available to the public. Okay, I'm letting that weigh in. Is this a good idea or not? I mean, I thought about it. I had to stick this in first because this was, remember the whole thing that came out in 2018 about the genetically modified babies, CRISPR babies. So I think I don't know if he was a physician or a researcher. His name is John Cui. And he used CRISPR to create these babies. I think he created 3, perhaps one died, to resist HIV infection. And this didn't go over that well. And he wound up in a jail, so we heard, for 3 years. But here's a really great paper on those CRISPR babies. And what do we think about designer babies? And I hate when they use affair, the Hey John Cui affair. You know, let's take that linguistic quality out there. Words matter. So on Amazon, you can get your own genome engineering CRISPR kit for $169. There it is. I just went on Amazon. Anyone can buy it. And then when you're done with it, you can flush it in the toilet. Well, then, yes, it's in the wastewater. And that wastewater may not necessarily be cleared out, just so you know. Okay. So as you can see, I have a few concerns with 15-year-olds modifying genomes in mom's kitchen or in the garage. This is what it can look like. There are normal chromosomes you can see at the top of your screen. That's what the shattering looks like. And this is called chromothripsis, is when they kind of reassemble themselves. Your body tries very hard to reassemble these shattered pieces. And some of those little DNA pieces, got lost. Where'd they go? I don't know. I don't know where they went. Okay. So I'm going to take a breath there. And then I'm going to kind of pivot. So, and then the big Broadway moment, I'll bring the two together in the end on why this is so important and why I've linked geoengineering and GMOs. So let's breathe for a minute. I think I have to breathe. And we're going to talk about what is geoengineering. And this is the kind of terminology I like. There's a lot of different terms for this, but basically by definition, you can read it with me, large-scale deliberate manipulation of the Earth's climate systems to counteract climate change. Definition. And I put up there for you the 4 main ways of how I'm not going to say we, because I've not been doing this, geoengineer. And again, I want to qualify the fact that I'm not an expert in this, but I've learned about it because I want to share with you GMOs and geoengineering from the perspective and lens of a clinician. I am a proud clinician taking care of children for many decades. And so this impacts our world. So there are basically 4, I'm sure there's more. Solar radiation management, which reflects sunlight using aerosols or mirrors. There's something called stratospheric aerosol injection, where they spray fine particles like aluminum, nanoaluminum, barium, strontium, silica, the lanthanides, let's see, anything else I can think of, and others into the atmosphere. There's something called cloud seeding, using chemicals to influence rainfall patterns. And then there's something called carbon dioxide removal, which captures and stores CO2, carbon dioxide, from the atmosphere. And I always like including pictures whenever I can, probably because I'm a pediatrician and I like pictures, and visual learners. Some of us learn better by seeing images. Let's talk about how GMOs can be integrated into the geoengineering techniques that I just covered. So, this is where I started. Can synthetic microbes be modified? Can we modify microbes, synthetic microbes, for aerosol interaction? So this is how I started down this rabbit hole. Microbes could be engineered to reflect sunlight, degrade pollutants, or act as biological aerosols or mirrors. They can also produce these little reflective particles. They're silica-like shells. Silica is toxic to us folks that scatter sunlight. And unlike traditional spraying using aluminum, nanoaluminum, barium, strontium, GMO microbes could multiply and maintain their reflective capacity without the repeated spraying. And why? To create self-sustaining cloud seeding agents. Now, you're saying, is Michelle hallucinating? Is this legitimate? What data do I have? And I did find peer-reviewed studies on this, folks. But what I also found were patents. And I learned during COVID to look for patents to see how long this stuff has been around. And this patent started in 2005. We did the US patent in 2011, it seems, for aerosol delivery systems and methods. So it's out there. So let's move on. I'm not going to read you the patent. So what about this concept of degrading pollutants? So some proposals involve, microbes engineered to metabolize methane. I'm not getting into cow farts really today. That's a whole nother group. Carbon dioxide, industrial pollutants, aromatic hydrocarbons, or volatile organic compounds. And this is a field of atmospheric bioremediation, still theoretical, but rapidly advancing as far as what I can find out from doing various searches. But of course, from GMO science, I said, well, do we really need GMO microbes to do this? What about fungi? Can't fungi do this? It turns out they sure can. So natural fungi can do a lot of this bioremediation that we're modifying microbes to. So what's the problem with that? There's no patent for those natural fungi. So you don't make money off those natural fungi. But I just want to share with you that every time they say, oh, we need a genetically modified organism to take out methane or VOCs, well, actually, our eco-friendly fungi can do a really good job, even pesticides, heavy metals, and even oil spills. So hold on there, folks. So let's shift to the next subject, the cloud seeding agents. This one really caught my attention. So there are engineered bacteria, especially this one called Pseudomonas syringae, produce ice nucleating proteins, and those are used in cloud seeding. And here are the names: ice nucleation proteins from Pseudomonas syringae. It's called the INA-Z protein, and a truncated engineered form of this protein. I just put those in there for any other people who really want to get in there with me, are expressed in E. coli, genetically engineered E. coli. And this synthetic engineering could enhance the ability, creating self-replicating cloud-modifying microbes, which can produce snow or rain, hail suppression, you can stop hail, fog dispersal, cloud seeding, weather modification, and artificial cloud creation. And we recently in California had about 26 days of this incredible fog, not Thule fog. And I really wanted to get out there with a little cup and do some sampling, but I don't have a lab. Some people do, like Mike Adams and others. I don't have that lab. But I, of course, had to make an image of what this Pseudomonas would look like. Found another patent. And this invention relates to bacterial preparations compromising ice nucleation proteins. And there was a patent. So I thought, well, there's a patent, follow it. It's a patent parade, folks. So as a physician, why am I concerned? Well, what about inhalation of these GMOs or their byproducts, which could cause inflammation in the lungs and cause immune reactions? I've heard from many individuals who've been under geoengineered skies that they've had chronic coughs. It's going to be really hard to figure out what's triggering those chronic coughs. But immune reactions from whatever's in the environment, 100%. Once these organisms are released, you can't recall them. They can alter the atmospheric chemistry, weather patterns, and microbial ecosystems without recall. I want to remind you that GMO crops increase antibiotic resistance. Impacts in the environment? Not sure. Living organisms cannot be contained. There are biosecurity risk, health risk, and no long-term studies exist on human exposure to airborne GMOs. We don't have data. We haven't looked at this prior to the release. We release and say, oh, look what happened, right? Can't reel it back in once it's been out there. So now we're going to get into the next part. And I think when I was researching, and this topic was my biggest concern. And I really kind of did a whoa when I was reading this stuff. And I thought, are you kidding? But let's see if we can break it down and simplify it of what this means. And this would be engineered algae over oceans. So there is a growing concept in the climate engineering space, which promotes using these genetically engineered algae, and you release them over large ocean surfaces to influence local or regional weather patterns. We know the ocean has this effect on weather. And this idea is what crosses synthetic biology, ocean fertilization, and hydrological manipulation. They all kind of come together here. So while this is not discussed publicly, it has appeared in the scientific peer-reviewed literature and DARPA-linked research. And certainly, I am no expert on DARPA, but I did find it. And I thought I would share what I find with you. And so, has DARPA been doing environmental genetic engineering? I can only share with you what's publicly known, and I can neither confirm nor deny, but this is what I found. They have advanced synthetic biology programs. There's one called Living Foundries that accelerate engineering of biologic systems. They have something called HEGAs, horizontal environmental genetic alteration agents, which are engineered agents to alter genes in the environment. They have done solicitation for gene editing agents for environmental use. And so this is what I haven't found evidence of deployment, but the research illustrates frameworks for programmable genome editing outside labs. So I just thought I'd share what you can find online. So why are they using this GMO algae? So they would use these engineered microbes over chemical engineering. Why? They're self-replicating. You don't have to continuously spray. They multiply naturally, which can potentially create persistent climate effects. They have on-off genetic switches. The synthetic genes could be designed to activate only in certain conditions, like sunlight, certain salinity, certain pH. You can program cloud formation. And through DMS, dimethyl sulfide, which is a cloud-forming compound, you can make different ice nucleating proteins. It's low cost compared to the aircraft-based spraying, and one deployment could expand into a basin-wide algae bloom. You've all seen algae blooms. So, in sum, simply stated, this GMO algae, genetically engineered algae, can be released in oceans to increase reflectivity, alter cloud formation, ocean fertilization, and GMO crops. This is what's really scary, folks, could be engineered to release more or less water vapor to influence local humidity and precipitation called evapotranspiration. So we make crops to release water vapor. What could go wrong there? Okay. So the reason why I got like myself in a dander and lost sleep is the following, and I think we're going to read along because I think these are important concerns, especially as a clinician and someone who cares about the environment. I know we all care about our environment. Well, I hope we all care about the environment. Let's talk about big ones. Uncontrollable spread. Ocean currents promote global dissemination of these GMO algae. There can be ecological collapse. They could outcompete native phytoplankton. And I want to get into that phytoplankton because those phytoplankton produce 50% of the Earth's oxygen. They absorb billions of tons of CO2 yearly, and they naturally emit the DMS, which seeds the clouds and reflects sunlight, cooling the Earth. So it's a natural geoengineering system. We can disrupt food webs, particularly to our ocean critters, alter oxygen levels, which affects plant life, and create those toxic algal blooms. We can create weather instability. I think we've all experienced intensified storms, droughts, flood zones, destabilized weather, and the bioaerosol inhalation. If GMO algae produce toxic aerosols, humans will inhale them, cats and dogs will inhale them, everyone's going to inhale them. Health effects, not known. I can surmise, I don't know. And I'm worried about that. I thought I would just share with you the difference between algae and phytoplankton. I don't want to get into this in depth. You can certainly take a screenshot. These talks live on my website. I set them free into the universe under presentations and under the show notes of each new MD show. But phytoplankton are essentially algae, but not all algae are phytoplankton. So I think it's important to understand the difference. This is an FYI. Now, those phytoplankton, again, these little buggers are key. Oxygen, carbon sequestration, food chain, climate cooling, indicators of ocean health, Earth's lungs, carbon sinks, climate guardians. These are really important little buggers, these phytoplankton. So in summary, we can get modified algae produce novel toxins that can contaminate just about everything. The fertilized oceans could cause an explosive algal growth with oxygen-depleted dead zones. Ocean sprays and winds can carry aerosolized algal particles inland. Doing what? Who knows? And these bioengineered algae may alter marine microbial ecosystems. And that would affect the ocean's role in climate regulation, human health via food and water systems, not to mention marine life health, which we are in the web with. And so I created this slide. I was concerned about the chronic respiratory issues, but it's not the only thing I'm concerned about. But I wanted to say, just, one of the things we see commonly in children are chronic coughs, and they're really hard to treat. And sometimes kids can cough for months, adults too, they cough for months, and physicians can't figure out why. Well, this may be one of the reasons why. There are changes happening in the environment that we cannot put a finger on as to what's triggering it. We don't even know how to test for it. So I made this slide for you as a summary slide. Feel free to take a picture if you find this helpful. Last but not least is GMOs and enhanced carbon capture. And this is actually happening. This is real. It's happening, and I'm going to give you examples where this is happening. Engineered plants and trees, algae or microbes are modified to increase CO2 absorption. So the University of Wisconsin modified a gene in Arabidopsis. It's a flowering plant in the mustard family to absorb 30% more CO2. Okay. What else is happening? Innovative Genomics Institute, IGI, is using CRISPR on plants and soil microbes to capture more carbon. And Living Carbon, a biotech company, engineered poplar trees that had a 27% boost in carbon capture. Like, these companies are just out of control without understanding what the heck we are doing. So here we go. Arabidopsis. Someone is going to have to weigh in on the pronunciation of that mustard plant, okay? From model organism to genetic playground. And I love the way, I was thinking about that. It's the plant equivalent to lab mice. It's genetically engineered in tens of thousands of labs worldwide. There it is. And what I question and what I want to share with you today, is there scientific humility? No. Is there regulatory oversight? No. Long-term consequences, have they been evaluated in terms of environmental health? No. What about our insect population? We cannot exist without our insects? No. So what I've identified this as is unmitigated scientific arrogance. I found this article About altered gene helps plants absorb more CO2, produce more useful compounds. This was from 2022, so it is happening. New funding from Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. They started, and also in 2022, a CRISPR-enabled carbon removal research at the Innovative Genomics Institute, supercharging plants and soils to remove carbon from the atmosphere. Is this something we need to be doing? That's what I want you guys to think about. That is what I'm trying to produce a provocative thought for you is like, should I listen to this gal, Dr. Pero, or should I be thinking about this? Do we need this? Let's think about that. So, a couple things that I've thought about. We know that CO2 is a life force or is a pollutant. It's essential for photosynthesis. We all know that. Reducing CO2 too aggressively, could that disrupt ecosystems? So my concern is before we rush into engineer ways to strip CO2 from the atmosphere, we must remember that this molecule is the life force of plants, and tampering with it could jeopardize the very foundation of our food chain. I'm thinking about it. Am I an expert in this? Gosh, no. But it's something I hope you'll think about too. And we all need to weigh in collaboratively and bring all our skill sets to this question. So the question I pose to you, do we need GMOs to enhance carbon capture? Let's talk about regenerative organic soil to increase carbon capture, what we at GMO Science and so many organizations have been talking about for decades. Rebuild soil structure, microbial diversity, root biomass, which is the core engine of carbon sequestration. And I wrote for you here how if we promote regenerative organic soil, it draws CO2 from the atmosphere through photosynthesis, stores it underground as stable carbon compounds, uses cover crops, compost, reduced tillage, deep-rooted perennials to accelerate carbon storage, expands the microbial networks. Soil needs them, we need them, and the mycorrhizal fungi that convert plant carbon into long-lasting soil aggregates, locks that carbon into the soil for decades to centuries, and it transforms farmland into a functional carbon sink while improving water retention, nutrient density, and ecosystem resilience. So we don't need GMOs. What we need is a return to regenerative organic soil. A few weeks ago, was honored to speak with Dr. Don Huber and others at ACRES, where we did a deep dive. ACRES is the oldest regenerative farming conference in the US, and this took place in Madison, Wisconsin. Just a fabulous organization and event, listening to my heroes, particularly Dr. Huber, in this field. And it is not only doable, it's being done. This is boots on the ground happening. Oh dear, yes, indeed. So companies controlling both geoengineering technologies and GMO seed patents could create climate-adapted seed monopolies, forcing farmers to rely on engineered seeds suited for the new altered climates. And what do I mean by that? Well, if there is aluminum being used in some of these aerosol drops, then there is, I read that they are trying to create GMO plants that can thrive in aluminum, a high aluminum soil, high aluminum contaminated soil. There is no beneficial health benefit from aluminum. It is neurotoxic, not to mention other things. So just to show you how this might work. Some things you can look at: dimming the sun, the urgent case for geoengineering. I just want to share that book with you. 26 million views of this film, The Dimming, exposing the global climate engineering cover-up by Dane Wigington. And I don't even pretend to understand what Dane Wigington understands. He has a great website, geoengineeringwatch.org, and some great content. And he's been reporting on this for decades, not only geoengineering, but the effect on trees. He's a real arborist specialist, and I really appreciate what he's done for us. So in sum, are GMOs being used for weather control? So synthetic biology is advancing engineered algae for CO2 capture and cloud formation applications. It's present in ocean fertilization trials. Patents exist for climate-modifying crops engineered for this altered evapotranspiration or reflective surfaces. And it's certainly in Congress. This was introduced several years ago. It was a bill regarding synthetic biology. I don't want to get into right now, but I just thought I would share with it. It was in 2022. Yeah, 2022. So it is definitely at our federal level, synthetic bioengineering. It's just some references for those of you who are saying, where is she getting all this crazy stuff? Well, here's where I'm getting it. And now I want to spend the last part on solutions. And this is not the quick things what we need to do. This is going to be long-term solutions on how we alter the course that we're on. So I'm going to talk about that word conspiracy. They drop it from my language. Approximately 31 states now have introduced, passed, or pending legislation regarding geoengineering and modification. I also read that there were some arrests made. I couldn't verify it, so I didn't make a slide. But it has passed for sure in 2 states, Tennessee and Florida. I thought it was also in Louisiana, but I could not verify it. Boy, I was struggling verifying which state has done what. Like in Montana, the bill passed in committee and the Senate, but failed in the House. So all kinds of things are going on. And there are some states with introduced legislation. So I thought you should know what's happening in your state. This legislation was introduced in July of this year by Representative Green, the Clear Skies Act, to prohibit weather modification within the U.S., and the bill would provide criminal penalties of $100,000 for each violation and up to 5 years jail time. Additionally, civil penalties may be imposed, et cetera, et cetera. But I want this to say that this is happening. Just look up. And it is definitely in our government right now. And I thank Representative Green. However, she has stepped down, as you guys know. So I kind of made these fact sheets of the act and the update. There has been, as far as I can tell, as of today, no new sponsor has assumed the Clear Skies Act. And so this is a place where we can act, asking our representatives to sponsor this important legislation. Look, folks, 26 million views on Dane Wigington's film. People are concerned. So what do? Step 1, get off the couch. This is not my issue at GMO Science. This is all of our issue, and we all have to get involved. So I like to think of it as how we do advocacy. And so I just kind of put the basic principles up, because when I first started down this road, I never thought of myself as an advocate, as a physician, but we really had to step outside our comfort zones and to do things that we didn't think we'd be doing. So policy campaigns to ban or regulate experiments, yes. Public education and outreach. That's what we at GMO Science try to do, educate to regenerate. Legal challenges and regulatory petitions. There are organizations doing that. And coalition building, where we bridge farmers, indigenous groups, climate justice networks. We're all coming together. And it's not these isolated silos that we kind of form webs and networks. We're all talking. And that's what I loved about Acres, where farmers came together with clinicians, with engineers, with plant biologists. We all come together and share what we know and how we fix these things. So let's talk about legislative action and policy reform. Just like to give you some things of what happened in the past. The voters, they had passed a ballot to ban GMO cultivation. So there are others like groups like Right to Know GMO campaigns. There are action steps that you can do to call your representative, and working with groups to enact legislation. I think, I don't know if I made this up or this really exists. Call your representative to support federal bills like the Genetically Engineered Food Right to Know Act. I hope that's a real thing. I can't remember if I did, but I'll verify and get back to you. What else can we do? Restrict GMO cultivation and geoengineering experiments. And I've given you examples. For example, 20 counties in California have passed ordinances banning GMO crops. states that are banning geoengineering and weather modification. And we can partner with groups like Organic Consumers Association, Alliance for Natural Health, Center for Food Safety, Friends of the Earth, Moms Across America, GMO Science, to lobby for local GMO and geoengineering bans. That find the groups that resonate with you. Thank you. Oh, thank you. That is from Ann Temple, producer of the new MDs and helping me out whenever I'm stumbling along. Thanks, Ann. What else can we do? Certainly put your money where your mouth is, literally. Buy from farms certified, whether it's Rodale, Patagonia Provisions, where your local farmer, please support local farms that support organic and preferably regenerative organic agriculture. And I gave you some ideas like of CSA programs, like one that's run Farm Fresh to You. Of course, what can you do in your own backyard? Convert your backyard or community garden into organics. And I try and do that. I could always use a little help, folks, but I've certainly tried. Now, how about corporate accountability and transparency? I am a fan of boycott. Say, listen, we won't buy your product unless you switch to verified organic products. And I gave you two, Nature's Path, Lumberg. I have no stock in these companies, but support those companies doing it right. We can email companies to demand clarity on ingredient sourcing. It was a consumer campaign, I think it was Food Babe, that pressured General Mills to remove GMOs from Cheerios. And donate or volunteer for watchdog groups like Center for Food Safety or GMO for USA that push for corporate transparency. What we're asking for is to know what's going on. We are not children who are being managed by parents. We are part of the solution-making decisions that need to happen. Our representatives represent us, and yes, they're not our parents, people. Can we strengthen global food sovereignty? Sure. Why can't we do that? Seed swaps. We know Vandana Shiva does that in India. And then there are local networks like Seed Savers Exchange. We want to preserve heirloom seeds. We want to support global food movements like La Via Campesina, which fights corporate control over seeds, and advocate for local food sovereignty ordinances like Maine's food sovereignty law, giving local communities control over food production and sales. And I just saw on X today where people who sell their organic produce are doing it on social media because supermarkets and other markets are giving them such a hard time taking so much of their profit. Farmers are struggling, people. Those are the folks who grow our food. You want to support these farmers. And so I love the farmers doing it on social media. I love that. I posted it on Facebook. No, I posted it on X. If you go to my X page, GMO Science, on Twitter X, you'll see the post from today. I love that. So we have a few more calls to action, and then we are going to take questions. What U.S. consumers can do to end geoengineering? What can we do? So we can call or email federal reps to support bills banning weather modification. You can use tools like govtrack.us or 5Calls app. We can join the safety campaigns run by Geoengineering Watch and Center for Food Safety. We can act locally in our own councils to pass no geoengineering resolutions. We can share the vetted resources and documentaries like The Dimming or What in the World Are They Spraying, as well as hosting community talks right in your living room. Remember salons? You can invite friends over. You can serve a couple little snacks. You can have gatherings, podcasts here. That's what I'm doing, or social media campaigns to inform others about the risk. And Anne is showing how you can find your legislators. Thank you, Anne. Even physicians are stepping up. I found this guy on X, Dr. Clayton Baker, and he created this letter that physicians have signed to state and federal lawmakers opposing spraying into the atmosphere of any and all toxic materials for geoengineering and weather modification manipulation. Thank you, Dr. Baker. I don't know who he is, and I've never met him, but I'm a fan from afar. So we're not going to watch this little video I did. This is a little nasty GMO Impossible burger. Impossible Foods, the company that made this little nasty GMO burger, funded by Bill Gates, their stock is crashing. And they said because of climate issues, I don't know, they blamed it on some nonsense. People do not want to eat this GMO food. If you want to know what's in that nasty burger, feel free to watch. It's like a 5-minute video. So I did want to bring something up, which I found Googling around, and I thought, what the heck? And this is Operation Sea Spray. And it was a secret biowarfare experiment of 1950. And it was warfare testing on civilians. You can find this. I didn't break any government secrets. It's online. And it's environmental atmospheric experimentation without our consent. And they literally dropped a kind of microbe into the environment, Serratia, into, I think it was not my area, San Francisco Bay in 1950. They dispersed it from a Navy ship, and they wanted to study the vulnerability, oh gosh, this was clever, of American cities to biologic warfare. And they tracked how far the bacteria spread. And there were all kinds of consequences for this. Citizens were hospitalized, one man died, they had an uptick in infections in immunocompromised individuals. So these type of programs which exist creates this distrust of secret government programs. So also the reason why I bring this up in Operation Sea Spray, biowarfare and modifying organism gone wrong. This is a precedent for the geoengineering, GMO concerns that I'm sharing with you today. Unauthorized testing without our knowledge, without our consent, with unintended consequences that we cannot recall. This is a cocktail for disaster. And last but not least, I'm just saying, dump this word from the scientific framework. I don't want to hear about conspiracies. I want to hear about critical thinkers. The media has proposed anyone who questions climate as the geoengineering or climate mitigation, whatever you like to call it. But as, conspiracy, heck no. Unknown does not mean untrue. Absent, and there's been no criminal charges. So absence of criminal charges does not equate to the absence of activity. We've got Operation Sea Spray, MK Ultra, et cetera, that show that government biologic and atmospheric experiments, don't forget Tulane also, have occurred without public disclosure or legal action, which means that unanswered questions about atmospheric releases and environmental interventions are scientifically and ethically valid areas of inquiry. And I just can't stress that enough. I would be remiss without talking about this, that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. Intellectual curiosity, as my friend Howard says, see what you're looking at. Look up at the sky. For those who look up at the sky and cannot acknowledge that they are different is very concerning to me. Have we been programmed to think that there's been no change in the quality of our skies? That is absolutely as frightening as the changing of our skies, that we are unable to see it. So we're having some good comments there. Let me just look at this comment here. Geoengineering started officially in the US in the 1940s after World War II. The main developmental goal was military. Since 2020, geoengineering operations have grown exponentially. I agree with you, Pasake or Pasak. I don't know how you pronounce your name there, but thank you for your comment. So, old book, new book. I just want to share with you as I wrap up today's talk, and happy to take questions. This is what I'm doing here. I am grateful to Ruth Westreich and the Westreich Foundation for supporting this work. As many of you other donors out there who have supported my work, I thank you all. I couldn't do it without you. I'm just one voice amongst many. I appreciate so many of you guys out there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And I'm going to also maybe take any questions that we may have that have come up during this talk today before we wrap up pretty soon. I'm trying to see, Anne has been so good about putting any questions up there. Anything burning before we wrap up for the new year? I don't see any questions coming up. Okay. Thank you, Warrior 1025. Yes, please do not give your child this Joe Boy crescent rolls. They're now, instead of saying something is genetically modified, they've changed the terminology to use synbio, synthetically bioengineered, bioengineered. Campbell's soup, for example, says on the label contains bioengineered ingredients. So I would say look out for this linguistic gymnastics, that's what I like to call it, and see, because same stuff, different label. Same thing, it's just changing the wording. I wrote an article about linguistic gymnastics on my Substack. Please visit Michelle Perro on Substack. And I've written a bunch of stuff. Particularly, I focus a lot on GMOs. You see a lot of articles. I have a recent article that's related to this topic that's up on the website, gmoscience.org. And also, I just created, which Anne will be posting up shortly, a new parent handout. I have a whole section on parent handouts, but I've created one on this talk because I think this material is really complicated. It's not easy to dissect or understand. We do not have normally a background in genetics. If science is poorly taught in America, as you all know, for those Americans out there, our science education is not good, especially compared to our European cohorts. We're not getting in the education we need. So just to remind you, I know you guys know this. Thank you for that. That's from all my handouts. They're about maybe 20 handouts now, 18 handouts, just so that you all know, if you stick to organic, regenerative food, you will not be eating GMOs. They can cross-contaminate. I've read anywhere from 5 to 9%, according to the USDA, and it could be even higher in some areas. So, but it's still better than eating not. The reason why we have to end the geoengineering is because all the crops get contaminated with those toxic metals. And again, none of them are good. The strontium, the aluminum, the barium, I think there's graphene oxide, the silica, the lanthanides. They're all toxic metals, and you can get yourself tested for toxic metals in your urine, in your hair. Directlabs.com might be able to do that for you, or an integrative health provider. So what's going on in the Bay Area in California regarding geoengineering? Dane Wigington is in California. So I suggest you go on his website, geoengineeringwatch.com, and see what he's got cooking out there, because I really do think he's one of the most knowledgeable individuals on this topic, particularly in California, where we've had a ton of stuff. So thank you for speaking up and getting involved. So on that happy note, I would like to wrap up the show and say thank you for joining us. All these shows live on gmoscience.org, the new MDs. Please visit it. Please consider a donation for our work. Sign up for the newsletter. I do not bombard you with newsletters. I can barely get to them. I put out about a new article once or twice a month. I am more prolific on Substack, quicker articles. I just did a whole recent series on the links of glyphosate to autoimmunity in children. So if you're interested in learning about all that. So I will see you the third Tuesday of the month in January. Not sure what we're going to be talking about yet. If you have a burning issue that you would love to see covered in the show, please email me, info@gmoscience.org. So we're going to wrap up our show. We did it in the hour. Thanks to Ann Temple, our producer, and thank you to Ruth Westreich, I was going to say conspirator. What a slip. She is my partner in managing many of these issues. And last but not least, I think in January, we might be looking at CURE, Center for Urban Renewal and Education, a program that Ruth Westreich and got me involved with, looking at the health of children across America who otherwise don't have access via Black pastors out of an organization in DC, a nonprofit. And Ruth and I have been to Detroit, and we are going to go to other cities. And if you think that would be a wonderful topic, maybe we'll be tackling that in January, helping those children who don't have access. So Happy New Year to you all, and see you again next month on the next episode of the New MDs.